All right, welcome to EOC Practice questions 21 through 40. Depending on the length of this video, I'll probably do 21 through 30 and then 31 through 40, so two different videos, but I'll post them both obviously on Google Classroom along with this assignment. So this is you're probably on Tuesday now, I believe it's the 15th, March 15th. The Ides of March, which is like when Julius Caesar was stabbed, right? I'm not real big on my literature. So let's go ahead and get started with number 21. So easy, I'm not going to make a mark on the board. What is the parent function of this graph? That is a parabola. So the parent function would be A. We can't call that the parent function, even though that would be an upside down graph, because the fact that it's upside down is inconsequential. The basic graph of that is just your regular old parabola. A should be the answer to that one. It is. All right, number 22. If we have this function, notice how I don't really even read the functions. I think it's important to read everything, but find out what the question is asking, because there's a lot of fluff and stuffing in these questions, which means things that you don't really need to know, but it takes a lot of experience to know that. That's why we are drilling killing it this week, all right? So we've got these two. What's the value of that? So we're adding the functions together and then plugging in a -1. This is the same thing as saying like f of -1, in which case we plug in a -1. It's just we're going to add the functions together first. So that's very, very straightforward. I'm just going to write it. I'm just going to do it in my head. Plus 4x plus 2 minus 2 cancels. That's our new function. I'm going to plug a -1 in. If you use your calculator, be sure and put the -1 in parentheses. When you square a negative number, it has to be in parentheses. All right? So that's going to give us 1. It's going to end up being 3 minus 4, or -1. B should be our answer. There it is. All right, these are going pretty quickly. Hopefully you're not having a ton of trouble with this, especially after all the practice that you've been through the last few days. I think this is preferable, by the way, to learning new material. I would not want you to learn material without me in front of you to ask questions, to class time to work on the problems and ask questions. That is my style, all right? So I think this works really well for this review while I'm gone, and hopefully you're getting something out of it, right? Evan, Kelly, you working over there with Chloe and Faith? And maybe Ethan popping in ever so often. Ethan always knows what he's doing. Ethan, write some stuff down. Write stuff down, all right? Okay, this is very similar. It's just saying, okay, we're going to basically just divide these functions, I should say. And I can use, I can either factor this as x plus 1, x minus 1, because that's the difference of squares. And then the x minus 1's cancel, and my answer ends up being B. All right, 24. I may be able to get all 20 of these in one video. We're only 3.5 minutes in. 24. Oh, okay. I thought this one I had a little bit of trouble with this one because I just read it crazy. And you're going to look at this and you're going to go, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And you're going to realize it's not as bad as it looks. That's the way most problems are, by the way. That's why I encourage you to read and try all of them, and don't let your anxiety about what it's asking get the better of you. All right, so if f of x equals this function and g of x equals that function, which graph corresponds to the function of, it should have a little dot there. This is multiplied together. Hang on. It should have a little dot there because it's multiplied together. So we're going to multiply these functions together. And I end up just getting -2x plus 1. That's our new function. I just multiplied the two functions together. So which graph corresponds to that? This passes through remember, slope-intercept form? We've got to go back to the beginning of the year and pre-algebra and algebra 1. You had this 3 times. That's the slope. That's the y-intercept, which is here. And that is the slope, negative. Negatives go this way, positives go that way, so our line ends up being U. Not as bad as we thought it was when we first looked at it. So D's the answer. There we go. All right, got two functions here. what expression represents plugging the first function into the second function? This is basically a different way of writing composite functions. We're plugging g of x and plugging it in place of x in the first one. So 3x squared minus 1 plus 7. All I did was rewrite the first one, but instead of x, I wrote the second function. 6x squared minus 2 plus 7 is 6x squared plus 5. That should be it. A. Let's double check. Yes, that one's A. All right. So, if we have a composite function, in other words, we're taking g and plugging it into f, same as the previous one, it was just written different, okay? So taking g and plugging it into f, there's our answer. What two functions might that have come from? In other words, what two functions created that composite function? So you can take each one of these and plug g into f and see what you get. Or we could do something slightly simpler, which means what I saw immediately was that, see how that is exactly the same as our composite? It's very unlikely we're going to end up with one of the parent functions being the same as the composite. So I'm going to cross off both of the ones that have 2x minus 1 in it. And then I'm going to say, okay, I've got this one. Let's plug that in. I would end up with 2x plus 1 minus 1. That would be 2x. That's not what we need. And this one would be 2 times x minus 1 plus 1. 2x minus 2 plus 1 would be 2x minus 1. There's our answer, D. There it is. All right. Which statement is true for this function? You should immediately go, oh man, a -4 would give me a 0 on the bottom. That means that x cannot be -4. Since the domain is all of our x values, -4 is not in the domain. Remember, domain and range are in alphabetical order, just like x and y. So you can remember that domain is all of the x values or possible x values, range is all of the possible y values or outputs of the function. So -4 cannot be in the domain, so the answer to that one is D, because that gives us 0 on the bottom. See how that's being used a lot over and over and over? Undefined, undefined. We're going to see that a lot in this particular one. Okay, we're only 7 minutes in, so I'll probably maybe be able to get this whole thing in one video. What is the domain of this function? All right, domain means it's asking basically, it's not saying what the domain is, okay? What I want you to read that it's saying is, what is the restriction on the domain? In other words, what makes it undefined? What gives it 0 on the bottom? So let's see, we're going to factor this, x plus 4x minus 2. Those multiply to get -8 and add up to 2. X cannot be +2. +2 or -4. So, restrictions on the domain, x cannot equal 2 or -4. So let's make sure that that one is D. Yep, there it is. All right, which intervals correctly? This is another one. Same thing, everybody. Same thing. Which intervals correctly defined? Now, you got to understand what intervals are, but all it's asking is, what can x not be? And you assume that it can be everything else. X cannot be -4. So we're going to say that it can be everything up to -4 and -4 beyond, but it cannot be -4. So we're going to have kind of a hole there. So let's make sure that this one is C, because algebra teachers don't know everything. All right, I got to check my work too. All right, this is another domain and range problem. Domain is all the x values, so you're looking at the x values for domain. Range is all your y values, so you're looking at the y values. This is saying that x is greater than 0. X is greater than 0, okay? That means that this whole thing needs to be this side of the y-axis, because x cannot be less than 0. It's greater than 0. So I'm going to cross that one off. I'm going to cross that one off. These are two possibilities because they're both on the right side of the x-axis. X got to be greater than 0. X can also not be 2. So I need to have a hole at 2. This one has a hole at 2. See that open circle? And this one has a hole at 2. So both of these are still in the running. All right? Y, our range. Our range is the possible Y values in it. So Y values need to be between -3 and 3. So between here and here. I'm going to go with B for that answer because that is the range. This one goes above +3 on the Y value. So this one has numbers in the range above 3. And it tells us we can. So we're going to go with B on this one. Let's check our answer. B, there it is. All right, let's see how we're doing on time. I will split this one up. I'll start 31 here in just a minute, okay? That was EOC problems 21 through 30.